I am Kevin Klein. This is Koop and Klein on politics, where we get to talk about Canadian politics, Manitoba, what's happening in Winnipeg. And again, always a pleasure to be joined by a political sciences professor, Royce Koop from the
Okay.
University of Manitoba and a columnist with the Winnipeg Sun. Royce, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me again.
It's always a pleasure. I want to talk to you about because just before we started taping, you got kind of how would you say emotional about Jagmeet Singh and the vote that happened last night at our Parliament building. So why don't you tell us about
Yeah, I don't know about emotional. Yeah, maybe I did. Maybe I don't realize that. But
that?
the NDP is very. I The problem with the NDP right now is they're in this pattern where they are constantly criticizing the government. Like the government is doing this terribly. They're not working for Canadians. They're hurting voters. They're hurting union members. And then it raises the question, well, the Liberals have a minority government, and so you have the opportunity to vote against them. You actually have the ability to defeat the government. And yet, when they're given the opportunity to do so, they don't. Last night we saw that again, like criticizing the government's proposals, this rebate, the tax holiday. And yet, when the rubber hits the road, like you have the opportunity to defeat the government and you don't. Now, there's reasons for that, but I think that at a certain point, Canadians, it feels like they're kind of playing us for chumps. If you are actually critical of the Liberals, if you actually think they're doing a bad job, if you actually think they don't deserve to govern anymore, then do something about it. You have the power. And I think Canadians, it's part of the reason why the polls haven't shifted that much for even as the Liberals have dropped, the NDP has not benefited that much from it. And I think that's part of it. Canadians are not going to be kind of played for fools. And that's honestly, as this goes on and on, it kind of feels that way, to be honest.
So do you think it's social media politics, right? They're just saying the negative things about the government to get the likes and the clicks and the retweets and all of that on social media. Because I would think you're right. Canadians are smart enough to figure that out. So what would make them want to do this?
Well, I think it's a strategy in some ways. They want to be critical. They want to get on the record as being a real alternative on a lot of these issues. They want to cut through the noise to Canadians with these critiques. And I think you're right. Social media does play a role in that. But at a certain point, Canadians are going to see, well, you have the opportunity to do something about this, and you're not. Now, we know why. Like the party is, I think, struggling a little in terms of fundraising. They're not really nominating many candidates. And so it might be rational, but it doesn't change the contradiction. I think Canadians are going to notice. And after a while, it does. I think it gets kind of grating, to be honest. There's people that are wondering, like, how is Justin Trudeau? He's unpopular. How is he hanging on to power? Well, it's the NDP, and I think people are going to put that together and say, well, wait a second, this is a guy that's you know attacking the government harshly over and over again. Why are they voting to keep them in power? And I think people put those things together.
Well, it's not unusual, right, for politicians to speak out of both sides of their mouths, and I think you're right. We are seeing this, but is the other reason because we had seen some time ago a lot of the politicians agree to push the election even further back, just by a few days, to ensure that they get their full pension. Is that part of this as well? Do you think?
Yeah, yeah, it could be. I mean that those were sort of uh, kind of rumors, online rumors, but it turned out that it was true. And Jagmeet Singh will become eligible for a pension in February. And so, take these arguments for what they are. They're pushed very hard. They're pushed very hard by the conservatives. I think that the explanation is that the party is just not prepared for an election. And so, the thing is, don't if you're not prepared for an election, that's fine. I can respect that. Like that smart thing to do is to wait. But then don't, have
Mhm.
this inconsistent strategy and attack the government, but then refuse to defeat them when you have the opportunity to. That's no good. Canadians aren't stupid. They notice these kinds of things.
Very valid point. So I want to switch for a couple of minutes to the violent crime. I mean, in the last 7 days, we've seen a large amount of violent crime here in Winnipeg. I have my own thoughts on that, but I wanted to talk to you about that, especially the stabbings at Polo Park.
Yeah, the news from Polo Park was really shocking. You know, it was two people sitting on a bench, just totally unprovoked, random, apparently. Uh, and what this does, the reason, I mean, obviously, any kind of violence, any kind of these crimes are disturbing in and of themselves, but this kind of stuff is very disturbing because, you know, random, unprovoked crime, it really drives people, you know, in back into their homes, drives them out of the community, out of groups, out of social settings. And for those of us that care about the community, it's very concerning when you have this kind of random crime. I mean, my family, we go to Polo Park. We could have been sitting on that bench. These are the kinds of thoughts that come into my head and they go into everyone else's head. As a result of that, we're more likely to kind of stand it when there's violent crime, when the government doesn't do enough about violent crime, when it feels like it's getting out of control, when there's random crime, we all just kind of sit inside our houses and peer, you know, through the shutters. We're afraid to go out. That's the worst outcome. We want to live in vibrant communities where we can go to the Forks and not worry about this sort of thing, where we can go to the mall, not worry about that. And we're losing that in Winnipeg. I think it's really, really concerning, and we should ask more of our politicians to do more about this sort of thing.
I agree with you. I think substantial action is required. I think we have seen crime as the number one concern for Winnipeggers year after year after year in all kinds of polling. And really, it's talk. There's no real action to address it. A lot of finger pointing. It's the federal government's fault. We need more money from the province. We're going to bring in, more social workers in this program and that program. Meanwhile, all these years have passed and crime just continues to go up and up and up. So, yes, I agree. Politicians do need to take some action. I have friends, Royce, that will not go Polo Park.
Well, I don't know if I'll go anymore. I think too in this province we sometimes get drawn into this debate between cracking down versus addressing root causes. And the truth is, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. You know, we don't need to get drawn up in these debates. We should do the things that work. And in a lot of cases, we know the things that work. And so let's get on them because random crime doesn't just affect the victims, it affects all of us. It changes how we see our community, how we engage. And no one wants to live in that kind of community where you're afraid to ride the bus, afraid to go to the Forks, afraid to go to the mall. It's no good. And we should ask more of our elected officials.
I want to hold you right there. I just there's a column in this weekend's Winnipeg Sun that I wrote about the venture capital and where Winnipeg sits on venture capital investment. And we are so far down on the list that you have to move branches and dust and all kinds of stuff to see where Winnipeg is. And in that column, I talk about the fact that, believe it or not, like it or not, organizations and investors are not going to go to communities where crime is an issue because they're fearful of attracting staff, qualified staff and their business. And that I think is a big problem that we're facing here in this city.
Yeah. Yeah. And we read so many stories about crime, but the Polo Park one really stuck out. In the same way that maybe about a year and a half ago, that stabbing that poor guy, the refugee from Ukraine at the Forks. These are the sorts of things that affect people. They drive people away. They might drive investment away. And we shouldn't pretend, as some columnists in the city pretend, that you can't do anything about crime, that crime rates go up, they go down. That's not true. There's lots we can do about crime, and we should be doing more.
Yeah. Again, it was a pleasure, Royce. I look forward to talking to you next week. Royce Koop of the University of Manitoba, a political sciences professor. Have a wonderful week, my friend.
You too. Thanks so much.